I'm Elizabeth Vincentelli, and I write about theater for the New York Times.
And I'm Peter Marks, and theater, I just can't quit you. We're back for another edition of Marks and Vincentelli, where we bring you the best stage chatter you can find in podcast land.
I think, you know what? It feels like a slight exaggeration, but actually it's completely true for our listeners.
It's both an exaggeration and it's true.
Absolutely, because that's how we roll.
Exactly.
Okay. So theater, I mean, I know people think, seasons, but it's a true 12-month-a-year industry.
Right.
But no interlude is more frenetic than the period we're entering now. Now, actually, Peter, our listeners might be into the nuts and bolts as to how the magic happens. Usually we have a kind of basic, very basic script that we follow, and then we kind of take off and go rogue. And you wrote this one, and I'm not sure you're using interlude in the right sense.
Interesting. That's an interesting observation. I wrote the word for Elizabeth, interlude, because I wanted actually just to hear her say interlude. I have an obsession with Elizabeth's gorgeous handling of English. And one thing I don't think we've ever discussed on the show is the amazing thing, Elizabeth writes in a language that she wasn't born with, that she's actually a theater critic in her second language, which blows my mind. I so envy. I wish I had a facility as in a second language as brilliant as Elizabeth's is.
Listen, I'm sure some people on Reddit are objecting to my quote-unquote command of English.
Oh, no. Well, anyway, but an interlude, it's a little bit of a stretch of the term. I grant you. But
you just wanted me to use something with U to French.
Exactly. You got it.
That's right.
Exactly. Okay. Is that petty of me? Yes, probably.
No,
is it abusing the form here of the platform for my own enjoyment? Absolutely. But anyway, you were saying.
No, well, actually, we're about to enter a very busy. I mean, it's 12 months a year, but some months are more equal than others, let's just say. And in New York, middle of March and end of April, which is when the Tony nomination deadline arrives, there's a kind of mad scramble for shows. And this year, there's a lot of musicals, actually, in this time.
Right.
So I think today we're taking a kind of like an interesting kind of approach into a couple of the big shows that are coming.
Right. We're pivoting, not, we've sort of only done really occasionally shows about the designers and musicians per se of Broadway and of theater. And today we're taking one of those pivots where we're exploring what I think is, of course, a quintessential aspect of theater.
Oh, yes.
The part that, one would unquestionably say is a feast for the eyes. So with that in mind, our guest is David Rockwell, the Tony-winning set designer, an artist with a scenic portfolio that extends well beyond Broadway. The projects in his design and architectural studio, the Rockwell Group, include not only plays and musical productions, but also hotels, restaurants, museum exhibitions. He won his Tony for the wonderful, unforgettable set for the 2016 revival of She Loves Me, the musical.
Oh, that was so great. That was so great.
Really
that set was just, it was like being inside a little bonbon box.
Yes, it was a jewel box of a perfumery that he created and deservedly won the Tony. And he's the conceiver of the sets for other big hits like Hairspray and Kinky Boots.
That's right. And this season he has two shows opening on Broadway in April. Pirates, ! The Penzance Musical, which I love that. Pirates!
Yeah.
The Penzance Musical.
Right.
Which clearly is a kind of version of the Pirates of Penzance. And then he also did the set for Boop, the Betty Boop musical.
Exclamation point too.
There's one. You're right. Boop. Boop and Pirates. So David will talk about how he approaches design with such completely. We haven't seen them, and I'm going to assume they're wildly different productions. He's going to talk about some of his favorite projects and give us a sense of the state of set design. Like, for instance, I'm really curious because there was a lot of complaints that sometimes some of the quote unquote sets are basically projections, and some people are like, "We're the sets," Anyway, so I'm very curious to hear what he has to say about that.
That's a great point. That we've diverged so much digitally into the idea of what the scenic concept is that it really has altered for some people too radically how we see theater productions. One of my favorite Rockwell designs is, in fact, totally three-dimensional, a New York restaurant, the storied Union Square Cafe down near Union Square. He designed the new, not so new now, redesign of when it moved from one side of Union Square to the other. He'll also talk about the theater-themed hotel just off Times Square, the Civilian, that he designed, and the work he's now undertaking to redesign a theater space, the Laurie Beachman Theater, in a beloved theater watering hole, the West Bank Cafe.
I mean, I want to get comments from our listeners about, please confirm that you have had the truffle risotto balls at the West Bank Cafe, because I think whoever has had the risotto balls at the West Bank Cafe is a friend of mine.
Have
you had them, Peter?
I have not had the risotto balls.
The balls. Balls of not having the balls.
Yeah, well, but also this beautiful plug you just gave, and we don't, we don't have a sponsor, so I'm not suggesting that we're, preemptively, inserting an ad for West Bank Cafe. But it's just interesting that you're saying try the risotto balls, folks.
Listen, folks, I was not paid for this. I guarantee you that I have put on a few pounds just thanks to those risotto balls. So.
I can just see a picture of you out front with a plate, and it says, Eve Vincentelli says, try the risotto balls. Anyway.
I want a life-size, cutout of myself outside of the West Bank Cafe, with my cheeks stuffed like a squirrel, risotto balls.
You just don't realize the ammunition you have just handed me.
Oh, my God.
I am just so thrilled at the idea of Elizabeth Vincentelli and risotto balls. Anyway, David, save us. Welcome to Marx and Vincentelli. Let's start talking about the Rockwell bio a little bit. I know you were born on the Jersey Shore, but then when you were young, your family moved to Mexico. I know that had a huge effect on your aesthetic.
Yeah.
So how does Guadalajara lead to Broadway for a set designer?
Well, I was just back in Mexico, and it kind of reminded me of that. So actually, I was born in Chicago.
Oh.
Younger of 5 boys. We moved when I was 4 to the Jersey Shore.
I see.
And my mom helped to create the legendary Deal Players, which has been heard of by no one. But she had been a dancer. So my in this very beautiful, sleepy suburb where everything happened in big private homes, I was in love with the community theater because I felt like that's when you discovered who everyone really was. And it was very much like Guffman, but I think maybe slightly bigger budget, maybe. And then my dad sold his business, and we moved when I was almost 12 to Guadalajara, Mexico. Again, being the youngest of 5 boys, it was me, my mom, him, and one of my brothers. And it was, looking back, which designers do a lot. I think things look clearer in the rearview mirror, like what your intent was. And so looking back, that was the most life-giving explosion of public space. And, private homes were teeny, but the public realm has literally roses down the middle of the street. And my restaurants were little taco places that were opened only on the weekend based on the person who owned the house we were eating at. And so I think it affected my love of light for sure. The quality of light in Mexico was irreplaceable. And my love of community and celebration and storytelling.
I was wondering how you got your start. Like, how did you decide pretty early on that sets what drew you to that?
Well, it was not so simple and easy, and which I think was also a gift. I think sometimes, figuring out little by little. So what I knew was that there was something about creating physical places that brought people together. That was what I was going to do. And I did have the most formative day before we went to Mexico in New York. And I saw Fiddler on the Roof, which at that point had Herschel Bernardi. So it was the original run, but I think he was the third fiddler. And I went to my first New York City restaurant, and that was Schraff's. And I just found, 1,200 strangers in the theater became a community around the storytelling. So I did become a fan and ultimately got to know Boris Aronson's wife, Lisa, after Boris passed away. But I was pretty obsessive then as I am now. And so I drilled into those things that interested me around placemaking. And I also guess, like many people in the theater, there's things in your life that you're trying to kind of inflect in a different way or trying to complete some journey. I think there's something about the families you form in theater that, for me, making places that brought people together was just what I knew I was going to do. I studied architecture at Syracuse University, and every summer I would work in New York. And I did a year away in London at the Architectural Association, where you could go to the theater all the time.
Right.
All my friends were in theater. And I came back to New York, and I wanted to take some time off. And Jules Fisher had been a friend of mine who I met studying in college. I was studying one of his theaters. And he introduced me to a Broadway lighting designer named Roger Morgan, who had just lit Dracula with Frank Langella and Edward Gorey. And I said, I'd like to come intern with you. And I ended up staying there for a while, drafting and then finished architecture. But my way back to theater was a longer journey. I established my studio as an architect in 1984 and all around restaurants, which is something I didn't have any particular insight into, but I did have insight into what brings people together. And I guess I had an insight into hospitality. And that led me to theater around 95, 96. I started meeting with a series of directors and sketching and had several false starts. And then Jordan Roth and Chris Ashley asked me if I wanted to do the Rocky Horror Show, which at the time I saw the DVD. I'd never seen the show before. My question was, why? And it's coming back, of course, again. And Chris Ashley's answer was, it's a show about the audience really being part of the show. It's about creating your own world. So it was a miraculous invitation, and how I jumped in. And I've now jumped in with every digit.
You mentioned Boris Aronson, who is, a legendary set designer, Sondheim's guy on Company and Pacific Overtures, I remember particularly. Is a set designer an architect or an artist?
It's a great question. I think they're a storyteller. And I think, a set designer's job is to create the world in which the audience and the actors can connect around a story. So there's definitely artistry in that. But I learn every day from directors and people I work with, and I think also the other thing about a designer that I know both of you know is when you see a moment in the theater that's thrilling, and then you dissect that, there are 30 people that collaborated minimum at
Right.
the moment. So a designer in the theater has to really understand and embrace all the other art forms. And it's not totally unlike what goes into a great meal, in that all the preparation that happens for all that time goes into that spontaneous one-time moment that's not reproducible. And that's what I find most remarkable about working in the theater, is you're creating these memories that are based on these one-time moments of all these different artists working together. So I don't know if I answered your question. I think both.
No, yeah. No, you did, really.
It's interesting to me that you work a lot, both in theater and restaurants as well. And both of them are places where you have, well, let's say an audience or diners, but it's also a place where a lot of people work. So you have to balance the kind of consumption of a meal or of art and a kind of storytelling about like what kind of mood is the show or the restaurant trying to communicate. But also you have to have people do their job within that. So there's a kind of very practical element to it. And I was wondering, how do you approach that? And I guess it could be also into like how, when you work on a set, like where do you start? Like, because the practical element is so important to it.
Well, you mentioned Boris Aronson, who did Sondheim and Hal Prince's seminal productions. And Hal Prince had the best description of what a set does for a show, which is it's the engine that propels the show. So, I start with, and I'm just at the beginning of another project I'm working on, which, you start with lots and lots of research. I fill the room with research on every tangent related to the project possible. Obviously, the story, the music, or the book, if it's not a musical, the period, the history related. And you try and find out of all of those fragments some way to conjure a place that will support that story. And I guess one of the things in all of the work that I do, I think about is movement. And I suppose that may be influenced by my mom being a choreographer, but I think that's one of the things you get to do as a set designer. You don't get to do in any other world, is your world flies and moves and dances with the actor. And that is, just something I've always admired and thought about. And interestingly, Elizabeth, in theater, theater has been an early adopter of technology, all the way back to the electric light, and now certainly with robotics and many things. So I think it's a great way to harness all of that to create these moments. And the same is true in, I think it's why people live in cities, frankly, is to kind of rub up against dissimilar people and have sort of these intersection of stories. And restaurants and theaters are two of the major places where that happens.
I love that idea of a set dancing. I know that Elizabeth has an interesting, some questions about the use of projections and digital elements. I'm curious to get your take, though, that idea. I realized when you said that, there's something so satisfying when you're watching the pieces of a set come together on the stage, the way that choreography works.
Yeah.
There are moments in a play that excite you because they remind you that it is theater,
right,
that it is something in 3 dimensions that we're watching in front of us. And when those pieces, and it's why I think audiences sometimes feel a little unhappy when there aren't sets, when we are in this minimalist period, and some shows really just sort of eschew the whole aesthetic of 3-dimensional design. But so I'm really curious about that idea of like how much in your mind there is this sense of the movement and putting things in place so that we are dazzled by that.
Yeah, I think the challenge, of course, is to be dazzled in a good way, because someone coming out of a show and the first thing they say is they love the sets, right, may or may not be the best prediction of success. So
beware the review that starts with a description of the set and how wonderful it is.
Exactly. I remember in William Goldman's book, The Season, what was the name of the designer that had his name in a box, which he made the point is never a good thing. I think there is a unique kinesthetic feel, but it's the same thing that I always find fascinating about two things that happen in the design world. One is what happens when the actors are added to the physical storytelling. So we're about to have our first day of tech on Pirates on Friday. And so, we've been working in shops and models and half inch and quarter inch and studying it. Well, the actors are going to come on. The lighting designer's in there today for the first day. You immediately know whether everyone is speaking the same language just to see how light the set takes light. Because that's your dance partner. Your lighting designer is your dance partner. And then, the actors develop relationships with the physical parts of the set. The props are an extension of them. So I think it's just a fascinating, endless attempt to try and capture that. And it's one of the things I always marvel at directors is that they take all of these elements and put them together to tell these stories. But, some of the most meaningful experiences I've had in the theater were super minimal. The Normal Heart, directed by George Wolfe, was not only minimal, but it happened very quickly because there was a benefit reading that they decided to bring to Broadway with an amazing cast. And we had to get Larry Kramer on board, and it happened super quickly. And having been, chairman of DIFA, which is Design Industry Foundation Fighting AIDS, for 12 years, and my brother passed away from AIDS in 94. It was a personal story for everyone involved. And it was, deeply, deeply simple and moving. And the thing about minimalism is the fewer strokes you have to make, the more significant each stroke is. And I think people misinterpret that sometimes.
It's true, because I often read, on forums and on social media, oh, that show, oh my God, they're so lazy, there was no set. Or, as opposed to you come in and you applaud the set before anybody has stepped on stage, or you don't know anything, which we've all seen that happen. But
no crime when that happens.
No, it's okay too. It's just a different approach. But it tends to be that but a minimal set is a decision.
It is a decision. Yeah.
It is absolutely a decision. And I want to go back a little bit about like the use of technology, because I've been really wondering, and I think maybe it was the revival of Sunset Boulevard that's on Broadway right now. I think some people were complaining, oh my God, it's all videos and there's no set. Well, there is something happening. It's a decision, and it's not like no set.
Yeah, well, I agree with you 100%. There's not only a lot happening, but it's brilliantly original. I think there's, I try to, when I go to a restaurant, not go to a place that I design where I'm going to critique how the lighting's working at that moment, but to go to a show like Sunset Boulevard fresh, knowing the original, which was a John Napier brilliant giant set, and to see this thrilling use of space that you've never really seen in the theater, with massive side lighting, no ceiling, there was no top lighting. And I can imagine a lighting designer, me telling them, we're going to do this with no top lighting. Such a brave, brilliant, original thing. So, I think minimalism is always a choice. Minimalism is sometimes, I can't think of a project where everyone on the team wouldn't have liked a little bit more in each department. I think, you don't really finish a project. They just sort of stop and then you move on because, you're striving for perfection. And I do think one of the things we all appreciate about theater is the amount of effort that goes into creating those moments. But minimalism is a choice, and it's not an easy choice.
Oh, yeah, because often it's like, oh, they try to save money on the sets. Like they just throw in, that's like the most common. But I'm curious as to like, what stage do you come in? Like how much is the show's aesthetic developed or approach at the stage that you come in? And I guess maybe it depends also on whether it's a new show or a revival, because one has baggage and the other not.
Yeah. So, the best scenario, most usually the director will reach out to the designer right at the beginning and talk through how they want to accomplish it. And that's usually when we get brought in. And that's true both on Boop, which is a new musical, and Pirates, which is a new interpretation with a new book set in a new location. So I think you try and start from scratch as much as you can, and start from working with the director. And it's one of the reasons why I thought the notion of the civilian hotel is a place that pulled the curtain back on the questions you're asking and looks at all of the people behind the scenes that you don't see, and all those decisions made before you get to the stage. For the people who work in the theater, it's exciting, but also just to give people some insight.
Yeah, I'm always amazed that, that Broadway really had not conceived of a hotel sort of devoted to Broadway before, and set design specifically, and obviously design in general, until the Civilian, which is, remarkable when you think about it.
Yeah, so that was a developer who wanted to build a small hotel on 48th Street. And I feel like there were so many great gathering spaces. Like, I do miss the Polish Tea Room and places where it was just so sad to see that go. And
in the Edison Hotel.
Yeah. So the developer said, well, what kind of hotel should we build here? It was a small parking lot. And I talked to a few friends, and I thought, if the building blocks were the theater community, it would be a great way to start. And it is an incredibly generous group. And there were so many great, Paul Tazwell and Clint Ramos and Christine Jones and Jules Fisher and Patrick Pacheco all helped get it together. And there's 350 pieces of original art. David Zinn is redoing the Blue Room right now.
Oh, wow.
It'll be reset. So I think it just, it required the right opportunity to say, let's do that, and kind of give that to the theater community. I also think the theater community is remarkable in its collection of these landmark buildings that have remained, landmarked, and that still demand 1,200 people be there at a certain place in time to see this story. That is a remarkable thing in this world. It's a treasure, and at least worth having a hotel about, maybe two.
So, for instance, let's say for a new show, do you get, you get a script, and then, you mentioned talking with the director and I guess other members of the team, because of course there's so many moving parts, the set works very closely with, everything, but especially the lighting.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the trick is that the actors often don't get into the set until fairly late in the process. So there's an element of interaction that you can't figure out until, when does that happen? And have you had moments when you thought, oh, Jesus, when the actors came in and you're like, oh my God, okay, that's kind of not, we have to rethink something.
Well, if I have that exact experience, I've put it so far to the back of my mind through trauma. But what happens is, it's also interesting to be in tech, because when you're in tech, it's a microcosm of your question. You got, a number of designers, choreographers, writers, all obsessed about a slightly different part about the picture. I think early on, the choreographer is critical. If it's a musical, in terms of how much space is available, where the musicians go, sound is critical. If lighting isn't brought in, right away, then you start to make decisions that don't work for the lighting designer. Costumes is critical because in some ways the color, they're using that to define character, and you're supporting that. So we start with research and sketches and model making, and something I've heard over and over again, and I think Tony Walton was the first one to say this to me, although recently I heard David Zinn say it as well, is, models don't lie. So if you take a half-inch model as opposed to a rendering or another representation, and Boris Aronson was a major model maker and really was a sculptor that way, you start to define that. But yeah, we've had situations we've gotten in the theater and there's been a kind of like, well, let's switch that around. Although the only time I can remember a set coming in and going right out was Hairspray in Seattle during early dry tech. The set for Motor Mouse came in, landed on stage, and I said, take it out. And then it never came back in and no one ever got to see it again. It was that wrong. But that's rare. Also in Seattle, one of the things out of town that you're encouraged to do, and very smart directors and producers talk about, is sometimes you need to let the audience help you define what the show is. So in Seattle, when we started previews, we didn't have the hair curtain. We didn't have the eventorium. We just had those open bleachers in the back. But based on early previews, the producers were fine executing the rest of it, which we were able to tack in Seattle. So we were to sort of use out of town as R&D, which is harder to do now with the amount shows are computerized and the sort of complexity. Massive changes of order of numbers and things just takes a lot of time to tech. So the more you know what you're doing out of town, the better it'll go.
It's interesting because people might think, oh, things have gotten easier with, computers, you're getting a lot more help. But it sounds actually some things have gotten harder and more cumbersome.
Yeah, they've gotten more automated, more cumbersome, and there's still something to be said for actors moving things on and off. I don't know if either one of you have seen a little thing we did at Lincoln Center called the Harvey Fierstein Theater Lab.
Not yet.
Which came out of the relationship with Harvey. But he actually wanted to go back to his early roots at La Mama, which was just a kind of black box, and wanted to create this flexible. So it's an interesting thing because it has a lot of technology built in, and the technology in there links to the theater's collection. So you can look at one of their classic shows on a big screen with pieces that you can recreate and stage it in front. So it's sort of low tech and high tech. But it came out of Harvey thinking back about what fostered amazing work and then giving us the opportunity to make that.
And aren't you doing something at with the Laurie Beachman Theater at the West Bank Cafe? Is there something going on with it you're working on?
There is. It was amazing that was rescued and saved. And, theater restaurants in the theater district are challenged because you get really one or two meals a day. But they wanted to bring that back, and they asked me if we would design the lower level cabaret. So it's minimal. I would say it's sort of maximal minimal. So the few moves we're making are maximal, but since there's only a few of them, it's minimal. So it's minimal maximalism.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I have to ask a kind of controversial question.
Please.
Have you had the risotto balls at the West Bank Cafe?
I have not.
You have not? What? Am I the only one?
Are you asking me because they're wonderful or not wonderful?
They're wonderful.
Oh,
they're wonderful.
I thought you were asking me about some dish that no one wants to eat that they need to get off.
No, apparently when there was talk about the West Bank Cafe closing, people are like, "Oh my God, what's going to happen to the risotto bowls?" I know I was not the only one to.
I love that.
Feel concerned about the fate of the risotto bowls.
I apologize for Elizabeth's question,
Oh.
but I've had so many happy nights at the Laurie Beachman that I'm really happy about.
I'm thrilled to be doing it, and it is funny that just a disproportion of my work is in that neighborhood, I guess, because I love it so much.
Years ago, when Julie Andrews was in Victor Victoria, those amazing Robin Wagner, I think, did the sets for Victor Victoria. Julie Andrews wanted to show the world how hard she was working, and she asked me to come. I was the theater reporter at the Times at the time, and she asked me to follow her through an entire performance. From the wings, from behind the sets. She dragged me all over the set. And from behind, those beautiful evocations of Paris that Wagner created looked so flimsy, and so they were held up with plywood. It looked like and like boards, and I was. Alternately enchanted and sort of like depressed by, how ephemeral all this was. And it made me think, as talking to you, David, as when the set is struck and it's over, I don't know, do you mourn the deconstruction of what you constructed? Do you take pieces of it as for nostalgic reasons, or just in terms of showing your work, or does it just fly out of your headspace?
Oh my God, there's so much in that. I do mourn it. The first thing you mourn, and I think most people would say this, is you mourn that you were kind of a family creating that, and then it becomes, it's out in the world and it lives its life. And when it goes away, it is heartbreaking. And I rarely go to final performances. I did, and it's hard to keep fragments of sets because they're so massive. I did keep the three houses from Into the Woods. If you remember, there were those three houses that hung overhead.
Right, you kept them?
Yeah.
And now my office is wondering, so what are we going to do with those giant houses? And I said, well, they were teeny in the theater. But what's really powerful about what you said about seeing the back of sets is how as an architect, I've been lucky enough to design a few theaters, including the Hayes, the renovation of the Hayes. And
which is great, by the way, for listeners. It's really terrific. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
Wonderful space.
I was so grateful to be brought into that. And then I designed the first show there, Lobby Hero, with Trip Cullum. And I remember sitting in the house looking at the walls and realizing, okay, now I need to focus on what people are really in this building to do. And just zero your focus on the set. And if you ever get the chance to be on stage looking back at the audience through the back of the proscenium, I think it's such a beautiful kind of example of the fragility it is fragile. Things don't work. There's automation failures. There's all kinds of things that go into creating that one moment. So I love your story about looking at the back of things.
And also, when you look out from the stage, the intimacy, the perspective is not what you're expecting. You're expecting this expanse, like setting out into the ether, and it isn't. It's a very contained space, so the eye of a set designer has to be conscious of that compressed view that we're getting of the world that you're creating, whether it's supposed to be expansive or very contracted. It seems to me something that's learned over experience. That's not something that comes easily.
It's absorbed over a lifetime of those moments when the shows begin, and thinking of those rituals that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. That something's about to begin. Something alive is happening in front of you.
Do you miss? There seems to be less and less curtains, kind of obscuring the stage. And I, for one, miss them. I miss the moment when it kind of goes up and you see what's behind. I mean, it's great. Sometimes you have, people take their seats and there's already someone on stage, for instance, pretending to sleep or read or whatever. But I do miss that moment when you really don't know what's going to happen.
I think it's like symbolically the moment when the actors on stage get to tell their story. It's when you become one with the audience. I do miss it. And actually, Pirates has a painted, beautiful curtain that evokes a curtain that hung in the theater of the Renaissance in the 1800s in New Orleans. And also the Death Becomes Her has that Austrian drape that not only is a curtain, but it gets to do that beautiful Radio City thing. So I think fabric is such a beautiful, beautiful form to use in a curtain.
Is color something, David, that it is debated? You know, like there are palettes for shows, and is it your eye? Is it an artist's eye who's developing that? You know, I don't know who makes that decision. Is it a director's sort of subjective sense of what colors really belong in the show? Is it in concert with a costume designer who may have a certain idea of what colors we're going to see, or I guess it also depends on how naturalistic something is got to be. But I wonder how much of that is in a consultation. I mean, do you talk about things like that at the beginning of
you talk about color endlessly, and you recognize that lighting design can overwhelm and wash out a color or enhance a color. Lighting design can edge light and bring out detail or flatten out detail. And you certainly talk about color with costume designer, because there's a big decision about how you identify a person or groups of people within a field, and also whether the color changes over time. I mean, the question I love to talk to a director about first off is, what do you want an audience to feel at the end of the show versus the beginning? What is the arc of the show? And, color can have a big effect on that.
Do directors know how to answer that question?
They all have some version of a question. Yeah, I mean, I think it sparks a conversation about
that's good.
What the essential thing is.
I like that a lot.
I'm curious because so much of it is, of course, we all love to think that we're driven by purely artistic consideration, but there's an element of problem solving that is so huge. And I was wondering if you could talk maybe about one or two shows where there were the problem solving was really kind of difficult,
Sure.
where maybe it was maybe the cast was huge and you had to help move people around, or there were different locations that you had to evoke, whatever, or, whatever it could be.
Well, one example that comes to mind was Doubt. Which was actually the Todd Haynes Theater, the same place where Pirates is going to be. In Doubt, I was very interested. It was a similar thought process to You Can't Take It With You, that in reading the play and looking at You Can't Take It With You is actually published with a ground plan, which you don't have to use, but it's a suggested ground plan. And in both cases, I thought there was something in the writing that could be further illuminated by the design. And that was the relationship of the locations to the city. So in Doubt, that is, even though it's this kind of retreat to another world, the city is right outside the window.
Oh, that's really interesting.
So we set it so you could see the window. And then we also felt like that there was an element of paranoia that was about one scene being able to see the other. So that's what led us to have those windows, so that as scenes transition, you could clock.
I love that.
The people looking at each other to caress that, and You Can't Take It With You. The moment was, even though it was a big 2-story place filled with knickknacks from this eccentric family, the audience walk-in was to this eccentric brownstone, but with the city on either side. So you saw it in context to non-eccentric. So those were complicated problems to solve. Boop presented, the problem of taking a 2-dimensional character from the world of black and white and representing her and Grampy and their dog Pudgy in a world that had the kind of energy of an eccentric mad inventor, because Grampy invents these crazy things. And I've loved Rube Goldberg all my life. And actually Hairspray, the Hardy Har Hut, referenced Rube Goldberg a little bit. Yes,
sure did.
So the black and white world going to the color world was the challenge and the thrill of that. And Jerry, as a director, is someone who is all about movement.
Jerry Mitchell,
who this is our 9th show with. He wants open space. So he wanted to move from this black and white world that's quite detailed and involves some magic into a big open world. So the things that are the problems are actually the things that end up being thrilling.
I love that you're talking in these artistic terms about the hardy, harhut, and pudgy. They're just like, it just has this great
Classic.
sort of,
Classic.
yeah, this is great. I just want to ask about theaters, and we'll leave you. I promise you we'll leave you alone, David. But are there theaters?
I'm loving this.
Are there theaters that you enjoy working in, and some stages that you when you hear which
He's not going to
space you're going to be?
say.
Well, he doesn't have to. He may not identify them, but I'm wondering how much.
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes. Okay, because I wondered if it's like you just go. I can work anywhere. I can make anything work. I mean, I guess that's the sort of the mantra. But I wondered if there's just like, oy vey, this is a bear. This space. The fly space sucks. The wings are too small.
So I don't know if this is a distraction, but have you both seen Vanya on Christopher
Yes,
Street?
I have.
Oh, I'm going tonight.
So
I saw it over the weekend.
It was amazing, and you couldn't ask for a simpler set, but fascinating how it was used throughout and lit and explores that. And it's one of the reasons why when they were doing the Museum of Broadway, when Julie spoke to me about it, the part I said I would be interested in doing is the last exhibit, the ground floor, which is called The Making of a Musical. And we actually interviewed, I think, 250 people who make shows and use their quotes. So it really looks at how you make things. And, as a designer, you usually you certainly have no say in what theater it's going to be in. And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you're creating a design and you don't know exactly what theater it's going to be in, but specificity helps. I mean, I think specificity helps design, and there are theaters I love working in. There's theaters I've always wanted to work in.
Right.
There's theaters I am cautious about, but Circle in the Square was where he did Rocky Horror, and that had nothing but limitations, but those limitations led to unusual solutions.
Daphne Rubin Vega and Tom Hewitt, I remember.
Yeah, Dick Cavett.
Dick Cavett, yeah.
You had mentioned the Todd Hames Theater, which previously known as the American Airlines, which is big. It's big. It's got a big stage, and I've seen some shows, smaller, intimate plays, kind of get a little lost on that stage.
Yeah.
I feel that's a challenge because, well, especially for a smaller show, like for instance, Doubt. That is a fairly intimate show, and so how does one deal with staging a small show on a big stage?
Well, you look at the advantages and disadvantages. I mean, it's better than staging a giant show in a small theater.
Okay. Yes.
Right.
We've seen that too.
You look at like English, which was such a brilliant production.
Oh yeah.
Took advantage of all the negative space in a very powerful way. But I think you do want to think about it's one of the reasons why with Doubt we were able to kind of embrace the city and have longer views. But it's a really good question is how do you, because most of these theaters weren't built to take in the amount of sets. Many shows you go to at intermission, there's things hauled up in the air. If you see what's going on, which you probably saw at Victor Victoria, you're working the best you can with these theaters that have limitations, and you try and take advantage of the opportunities and limit those limitations.
You know what would be great fun? I'm saying this to Elizabeth. If you could go to a show with David, and see through his eyes the set, how the set strikes him. It's one of those. I long for that kind of eye telling me what's going on in his head as he sits through a show, and what things he notices that we would never see. He knows what shortcuts are being taken, what was accomplished, and perhaps what was envisioned, even not his own show, but somebody else's show, actually.
And all that the three of us know about theater in different ways, when you go to a show and you lose track of all of that or just caught up in the moment, something really powerful has happened that you're no longer tracking. Where did they go? How's that writing?
Yeah, it's always interesting you're right. It's really when you forget about like, wait, how did they do that? Or you just and then you realize, wait, how did they move all these many people all at once? Like, where did they go? I have no idea. Or like, my favorite one is when the set changes and I don't even notice. I'm like, wait, when was this there the entire time? Like, I'm so oblivious to it. But, there's also a sense of misdirection also in the staging, like drawing your eye. I remember very distinctly that Ingmar Bergman, was so obsessed with like controlling the audience's gaze on stage that he didn't want to use subtitles. So every time he came to BAM, which was his home, where he presented his shows in New York, he insisted on having simultaneous translation. So you would get this little, headphones and this very neutral person talking neutrally in English, because he did not want your eye to go where that's the version that I heard, that it was so. Well,
it's so interesting because
that was more important to him than having the intonation of, Well,
it's like going to the Met now, and it's great that you can look down and read it all, but
I agree.
You're not looking at the stage.
Completely.
I actually look at the person at the Met. I look at the screen of the person in front of me. I don't look at my screen. It totally works because it's more in your line of vision.
You can't look at the person to the side because there's the polarized filter.
Correct.
Like
you can only see your own. I can only see my own.
It's brilliant.
When I do that.
But the person in front of you can see because they're right in your line. And that to me works because your eye doesn't travel as much up and down when you're looking at but anyway.
So we should wrap up. But I'm just curious, David, so in April, you've got these two shows opening, these two huge shows, Boop and Pirates.
Yeah.
Do you sleep? I mean, is this like, are you constantly running from theater to theater? Or what's that like?
It's the best thing in the world to be able to do that. It is, but no, I don't get a ton of sleep. I do play piano. So I do. I'm working on a Liszt piece that is difficult enough that if I get home at 11:30, a half an hour of that will just get me focused on that. But what a great thing to be working with these two companies and these two great spaces and both directors I love.
Well, thank you for this, David. We'll both be at your shows. We'll be spectators for more Rockwell productions, more Rockwell sets.
Have you guys been to the View yet at the Marriott Marquis, the rotating restaurant?
Not yet.
No.
Did you do that?
I did.
Oh, wow. I went to the old one, but not to the new one.
But I don't think they have risotto bowls, so I don't think, Well, but no, I'd love to go.
I may get on top of that now.
Yeah, David. Now you've given us a great recommendation. Can we say that you sent us?
You can say that I sent you, definitely.
Okay, that's fantastic.
Get a drink.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'll see you both around the theater somewhere, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, Elizabeth, you and I will be getting an eyeful of David's latest flights of skill and fancy.
That was such a great interlude.
Oh, thank you.
No,
and
right?
and not even a plate of risotto balls. I enjoy when we illuminate the design aspects of theater.
Listen, I'm really easy. You give me some risotto balls and I'm yours. That's all it takes.
This has to be a thing.
I can tell
silly.
listeners the next shows that I will be at, and they can wait for me outside with like a takeout container of the West Bank Cafe.
That would be lovely.
Again, I want to emphasize we are not paid for this. We should be, but we're not.
I have to admit, Elizabeth, until you mentioned the risotto balls, I didn't know they had risotto balls.
Oh my God,
I didn't even know you could make risotto into a ball.
Well, it's like, how could you not? Well, number one, this is the U.S. where everything can be turned into finger food, including risotto. I'm sure Italians would roll into their grave that they're not in because they're alive. But anything can be turned into finger food. And although I eat them with a fork because it's a little messy, but
okay, whatever
anyway.
you say.
Anyway,
And
a bowl.
So this is where we announce that we're starting a new show on the Food Network.
That's right.
But anyway, before that happens, if you want to explore theater with us, be sure to subscribe to marksvincentelli.substack.com.
And for the full ride, full ride with all the trimmings. All the trimmings.
All the risotto balls.
Consider becoming a Pink subscriber. If you've heard our recent episodes with Adam Lambert and the one about the Kennedy Center with Anne Midget, oh my God. Like highlights of our podcasting run.
Totally.
Which has a lot of highlights, by the way. I keep thinking we should do like a best of one day because there's some there's some doozies in there. But anyway, in the meantime, you can follow Peter on Blue Sky and Threads. I'm pretty much only on Blue Sky these days myself because I find the mood there just a little bit more civil. And until next time, I'm Elizabeth Vincentielli.
And I'm Peter Marks. Another interlude with us drops soon.